On May 11th, 2011, a 6-year-old boy walked out of his elementary school, signed out by his mother for a family emergency. He was never seen again. What followed was a 2-day road trip, 3 stops, a trail of surveillance cameras, and a note that ended everything but the questions. Timmothy Pitzen didn't vanish by mistake. He was made unreachable. As laughter echoed against the plastic slides, she tried to make each second last. Her son grinned and splashed, eyes bright with joy. It was only the first day of their sudden getaway, a trip no one knew they were taking. Around them, other parents sat with towels pulled tight around their shoulder, checking phones, calling out reminders, already thinking about what came next. Amy inhaled the thick, chlorinated air and exhaled slowly. She smiled back at her son, but not the kind meant for photographs. Something quieter, more contained. Timothy was 6 now, all limbs and energy, splashing without a care in the world. She loved that about him, how completely he existed in the moment. No past, no future, just sunlight and water. To everyone else, they looked like any mother and son on vacation, but nothing about this trip was normal. A lifeguard's whistle cut through the air, a reminder that time was still moving, whether she wanted it to or not. Today would be a good day for both of them. It had to be. She watched as Timothy climbed the steps of the slide, disappearing for a moment behind the plastic curve. Her eyes stayed fixed there, her hand tightening around the edge of his towel, waiting for him to reappear. A second passed, then another. The opening at the bottom of the slide stayed empty, just long enough for a quiet tension to take hold. And then he burst through, laughing, breathless, water spraying outward as his feet hit the pool. His joy arrived all at once, loud and unguarded, as if the world had simply given him back. Amy felt it land in her chest, that brief, overwhelming relief, seeing him again, still smiling, still hers to reach. For a moment, nothing else mattered, not the drive ahead, not the decisions waiting beyond the doors of the park. Just this, the certainty of seeing him again. To Timothy, it was only a slide, a game he could repeat again and again. But to her, it felt like everything. A moment where separation still ended in return, where letting go didn't mean losing him. All she wanted was to stay there, with him, in this moment, just for a while longer. For now, there was only the smell of the pool, the echo of a child's laugh, and the fragile illusion that nothing was wrong. Amy knew better, but she held the moment close anyway, because even if the ending was already written, this was the part worth remembering. The television murmured in the background, but his thoughts drowned out every word. Timothy's father, James, had been staring at the screen for hours. The morning had blurred together. Taking a sip from his mug, the coffee had gone cold and bitter. Had he made it this morning, or was it yesterday? It was Saturday, May 14th, and it had been 3 days since Amy vanished with Timothy. 3 days of an empty home and restless thoughts. Worry had long since calcified into something else, a deep, guttural dread that overshadowed every experience. He tried to tell himself this was like the other times, Amy's old impulses flaring when she felt overwhelmed. She had been known to take a sudden road trip every once in a while when she needed space to think, but she always came back. Despite her usual pattern of behavior, this time felt different. It just didn't sit well with James. 3 days ago, on Wednesday the 11th, he dropped Timothy off at Greenman Elementary before taking his wife Amy to her job. The day before, Amy had driven herself to work, but left early, feeling unwell. A friend brought her home. Her car stayed parked overnight. At 10:30 that morning, about 2 hours since the drop-off, James returned to pick up his son, but Timothy wasn't there. When he demanded answers, the secretary explained that Amy had returned shortly after Timothy arrived, telling the staff there had been a family emergency. She signed him out and left in a hurry. James checked his phone. Maybe she had called and left a message? But no, there were no missed calls, no texts, no explanation. He called her, no answer. Then again, but it went straight to voicemail. Fearing the worst, James went to the police and told them his wife had taken their child. They pointed to her history. Maybe she just needed space, but Amy had never taken Timothy before. Still, they told him to wait. By the time a report was taken the next day, dread had already taken hold. And as he stayed in that empty house, the silence became a constant reminder of how alone he really was. Last night, Friday the 13th, the stillness broke. There was finally news from Amy. She had spoken to relatives, and even let them talk to Timothy. But she didn't call James, the boy's own father. James called her once he heard she had finally reached out, but she wouldn't answer. Not hearing his son's voice almost broke him. How could she deny him contact with their child? Knowing they were both all right gave him some slight relief, but their void remained, unsettling and cold. A loud burst from the TV brought him back to the present, pulling him from this lingering torment. Grabbing the remote, he turned it off, and the room went still again. A knock at the door shatters the silence. As the flutter of hope filled his stomach, James nearly tripped over himself as he went for the door. Swinging it open, his racing pulse was met by two men, one older, one younger, with a look that conveyed a serious but calm presence, professionals who've done this before. "Mr. Pitzen?" one asked. "We're with the Aurora Police Department. Can we come in?" James stepped aside, beckoning them in. "We have some information about your wife." He nodded. His throat had gone dry with anticipation. The older detective met his eyes. "We found your wife. She's deceased." The words hit him so hard he felt his knees buckle. James blinked, almost as if to check if this was real, and not some nightmare. "What do you mean deceased?" The younger detective spoke up. "She was found in a motel. Appears to have taken her own life." James heard himself speak, but it felt distant, like he was outside himself, just a spectator to a tragedy. Finding the words, he asked them, "Where's Tim? Where is my son?" The younger detective looked away for a beat, glanced at his partner, then at the floor. When he looked back, his voice was lower. "We don't know." Dust floated through the column of afternoon light, landing softly on her body. Despite the flashing lights and caution tape, the motel was quiet, mundane. The room swarming with people felt hollow. Not empty, but filled with a presence that muffled everything inside. It wasn't grief, just a quiet tension that muted every sound. She lay near the bathtub, collapsed where she had stood. A pool of crimson had spilled outward across the tile, like a spilled glass of wine. Her death was ruled a combination of self-inflicted wounds and an overdose on antihistamines. But the question remained, where was Timothy? The motel room gave them nothing. No sign of a struggle, no clues. Timothy's backpack was missing, suggesting, perhaps, he had left with someone. The only explanation for the tragedy before them was a note, neatly written in Amy's handwriting, sharp, deliberate, and final. She apologized to the motel staff for the scene she'd left behind, and wrote that her son was safe with people who loved him, but you will never find him. No names, no locations, just that sentence, final, cruel, and ambiguous. In the days that followed, 2 more letters surfaced, one to her mother, another to a close friend. Each carried the same haunting message, that no one could have stopped her, and that Timothy was safe, but gone. With the hotel holding no answers, just dusty curtains and stale air, investigators began to look back at the hours and miles that came before. They retraced her steps, starting at the beginning. After Amy picked Timothy up from school on Wednesday the 11th, she dropped her car off at a mechanic, routine maintenance before heading out. While the work was being done, she took him to the zoo. They fed animals, laughed, took photos. Afterwards, they picked up the car, and the road opened in front of them. If there was any hesitation, she didn't show it. If there was dread, she buried it. That evening, they checked into the Key Lime Cove, a family resort just north of Chicago. The lobby glowed with neon signs and plastic palm trees, the kind of decor that promised escape, no matter how artificial. Walls vibrated with the hum of vending machines and the steady drip of an indoor fountain, while families drifted through in flip-flops and swimsuits, chasing small pleasures. Cameras captured what looked like a vacation. Amy and Timothy were seen stepping out of an elevator. He was laughing, towel draped over his shoulder, a small backpack bouncing against his side. Amy smiled as she tousled his damp hair and held his hand, gently but tight. The scene was cheerful, even serene. Light reflected off damp tile floors, voices drifting down long hallways. The kind of background noise that makes you forget the world outside. The next day, Thursday the 12th, they took a long drive to another resort called Kalahari, where Timothy enjoyed what many would consider to be a kindergartner's paradise. Bright tubes twisted overhead as water rushed in endless loops. Shouts of joy and the smell of fried food bounced off painted walls, made to look like a jungle sky. For Timothy, it was never-ending joy as he ran from pool to pool, eyes wide, like this world was made just for him. For Amy, it was quieter. She forced a grin, but her posture stayed stiff, her gaze often distant, like she was already elsewhere. The following morning, Friday the 13th, they were seen again, checking out from the resort. Amy stood at the front desk while Timothy lingered nearby, focused on something in his hands. Her purse strap stayed looped tightly over her shoulder. She nodded politely, but there was a distance in her eyes, a stiffness in her posture, her lips bent upward, yet her eyes stayed hollow. They headed west, toward rural towns near Route 78. No known ties, no clear destination. Along the way, Amy called a few relatives. She told them they were safe, calm, just on a trip. At one point, she even let Timothy speak. It would be the last time anyone heard his voice. She never called James, never gave him that moment. At 1:30 p.m., her phone went dark. Time stopped there. That was the last clear point in the timeline. Everything after that fractures. 6 hours passed. 6 hours. Enough time to go almost anywhere. Across county lines, onto roads that don't keep records. When the clock started moving again, Timothy was already beyond reach. At 7:30 p.m., she was spotted 50 miles away, walking into a small dollar store. It doesn't take 6 hours to drive that far. She floated through the aisles with purpose, quiet and ordinary. Paper, envelopes, toiletries. She gathered what she needed and left. The footage showed no alarm, no breakdown, just a woman collecting the last things she needed for her final destination. 30 minutes later, at 8 p.m., she was spotted again, this time at a grocery store. A box of crackers, a gallon of milk. She didn't speak much. Nobody noticed her. After that, nothing. Around 11 p.m., she checked into the Rockford Inn and rented a room for one. There were 2 queen beds inside, a resting place for someone who would never show up. She ate plain crackers and milk, alone, in a musty room, far from home. No children's laughter, no splashing water, only crickets outside, and the low hum of a roadside motel. With every step accounted for, the search narrowed to 6 missing hours, lost somewhere in the Illinois woods. Investigators combed through her computers, phone records, and finances. Every search, every transaction. But once again, it led nowhere. Nothing hinted at where she'd gone or where she'd left her son. More than 70 volunteers moved through the brush and fields, their footsteps heavy with hope. Dirt from Amy's car was analyzed in an attempt to narrow down where she'd traveled, but it told them nothing specific, and an exact location couldn't be found. No backpacks or toys, not even a tire mark. Whatever happened during those hours remains unknown. She claimed they would never find him, and it seems she might have been right. As the years marched forward, the search stalled, and James was left in a kind of purgatory. In 2013, Amy's phone was found on the side of the road near Route 78. For a moment, it looked like the break they'd been waiting for. It wasn't. It gave them nothing new. Many years later, in 2019, a young man appeared, disoriented, claiming to be Timothy. For a brief moment, hope resurfaced. James allowed himself to believe, just enough. DNA told a different story. It was a hoax. Whether it came from cruelty or someone else's brokenness, it ended the same way. Silence. In the absence of answers, speculation took root. Some held to hope that she left him with someone she trusted. Others just couldn't ignore the terrible possibility that he's still waiting somewhere beyond the tree line. To Amy, it seems Timothy belonged to no one else. A life she brought into the world, and a life whose fate she believed she could choose, in the name of love, or mercy, or something far more broken. No matter his fate, Timothy remains present in the people who wait for him, especially his father. James now carries something crueler than grief. A life paused, a question left unanswered. He still believes Timothy is out there, a young man with a borrowed name, a missing past, and no idea who he truly is. Through the photos on his wall, Timothy still watches, bright eyes frozen in time. A look that once meant innocence and joy, now a quiet reminder of what could have been. Some tragedies end, others become a wound, one that settles in the bones of those who remain. Not death, not hope, just the weight of something missing. Thank you for spending time with me on the story of Amy and Timothy. If it left an impression, I hope you'll subscribe for more stories like this one. And if you want to support the work, you can leave a like. I hope to see you next time. Until then, be still.